Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about the note frequency chart. And by the end, you're going to have a system for finding at least 7 octaves with 99.2% accuracy using 3rd grade math. Stay tuned.
Learning all your frequencies doesn't have to suck. It don't take luck. It's easy as fuck.
Hey, I'm Michael Carrillo, aka Hexspa. Welcome to my channel. Here I release original music and music making tutorials, so if you haven't, click subscribe. Since I got involved in audio, which actually was like when I was 12 years old, I've known about audio frequencies, but it wasn't until I signed up for Berklee Online that I really started to look more deeply into the correlation between notes and frequencies. And as musicians, we kind of accept that there's going to be some tolerance in our playing. We're not always going to play perfectly, but for some reason, when we start with audio, we think everything needs to be 100% precise. We bust out the pocket calculator to get exact tempos, which may be rhythms more important, but for pitches, we think we need to know audio frequencies to the 100th place. As a consequence, we don't really remember these frequency charts. So let's take a look at a regular frequency chart here. I know you've seen these before. You've probably tried to memorize them with very little success. But if you look close, and you might already know this, the A natural row is all whole numbers. And if you look at A4, it's 440. This makes sense because pitch is a man-made convention. There is no A440 really in nature always happening at the same time. Yeah, there's wolves and stuff howling, but they're all slightly out of tune. We use A440, just a nice round number. As we know, over the years, in classical music, the reference pitch was lower, but it became higher and higher over time to create a brighter sound. In any case, right now, it's 440. So all the 440, or excuse me, all the A notes are all multiples of that, or divided by 2, because what's an octave? It's double the frequency. But if you look even closer, you'll notice that other notes, like in the G family, there are other whole numbers. For example, in the 0 octave, which are exact halves. And if you look at F4, it's pretty close to 350. So when I was starting to memorize the frequency chart, I tried to use techniques I learned in a mega memory course. I don't know if you know who Kevin Trudeau is. I think he got in some heat for coming up with bunk supplements or something. But the mega memory course is actually pretty good. You can use it to memorize people's names and stuff. So when I was trying to memorize these frequencies, I thought I'll start with C1. You know, it's a frequency we can hear. It's C, why not? C1 is 32.70 Hertz. It took me a while, actually. How I memorized it was I imagined a caret, which represented C, on a tray, which represented the 3. And then I hit the caret with the tray. And as I watched it fly, I threw up a deuce, which represented the 2. And then I pointed at it, which represented the point. And then it magically turned into a Seagram's 7 bottle, which is how I remembered 32.7. And then, you know, the next number is 65.41. for C2, and I'm like, man, there's too many numbers. This is ridiculous. But I was still chewing on it for a few weeks, and one day I was waking up and I just sort of had this vision of 2 nerdy kids sitting across from each other at a table with their laptops. And the skinnier, more confident kid was telling the fatter kid that some famous DJ said that the key of the song was in 7,774 Hertz. Like the key of the song was in some kind of frequency nomenclature. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, right, Ableton. People think of keys in note names. And this was an Ableton live ad. I know, dreams are weird. But then immediately following that, I saw a frequency chart in my sleepy brain. And there was 2 values filled in. There was 32.5 and 65. There was no 0.7 or 0.41, and the font was very clear, almost like, I don't know, a bold font, and it communicated simplicity. And it occurred to me that people can't remember these weird odd decimals, and that I could teach this to people if I could make it simple. So I woke up and I started coming up with all these different rules to find these different notes. And, you know, with the C group, I had already come up with the basic idea of offsets based on the dream. So you have 62.5, and then you add an offset of 0.2, and then that gives you 32.7. And then if you take 65 as a whole number and that's 0.4, well, now you have the fact that you're multiplying the whole base number and you're multiplying a smaller offset and then adding them together as you go up. So I was like, great. I came up with all these different rules. I put them in a chart and it was still too complicated. I came back to it a day later. I was like, how do I reach these keys? So I tried to really simplify all the numbers and stuff and read the numbers vertically and horizontally. And I'm like, man, this is not working. And so somehow I managed to notice that F4 is pretty close to 350 Hertz. And that if you add 20 cents, you get F sharp 4. And if you subtract 20 cents, you get E4. Before we get into all that, let's take a look at the basic numbers of what I consider to be the F350 system. We're going to start in the center here, okay? And the reason why we're starting in the center, this was inspired by my mix cube that focuses on the mid-range where everybody can hear. You know, not everybody's hearing sub bass or whatever. So I was like, let's start from the middle. This has the added benefit of us being able to find octaves in either direction more easily without starting from either extreme of the audio spectrum. So if we look at F4, we notice that it's 350 Hertz. E, F, and F sharp 4 all share the base number of 350. Now, if we go down to the D group, we see that D4 and D sharp 4 both use a base number of 300, which is 50 cents more flat, which makes sense because D is lower in pitch than E, F, and F sharp. Now, if we go up to the G group, we'll see that the base number is 400. And then we go to A, the base number is 440 because almost everybody knows that A4 is 440. So I use that as the base number for A and A sharp. And then B is 500, which is super easy. And then the base number for the C group is 280. So you'll notice that most of these are grouped by note family, with the exception of E, F, and F sharp. I used sharps partly because digital audio workstations use sharps as a convention. We don't see a lot of flats. And it just so happens that everything works out better like this anyway. So without further ado, let me introduce to you the full F350 method for calculating audio frequencies up to 10 octaves. So you can see from this chart that we've eliminated the 0 octave and we've eliminated the 8th octave. And the reason why is because the 8th octave is mostly sibilants and harmonics, and the 0 octave mostly is below human hearing, unless it's super loud. Then you can, if it's extremely loud, you can hear 16 Hertz, but your speakers aren't gonna reproduce these frequencies. Usually subwoofers go down to 32 Hertz. Maybe if it's really good, it'll go lower. But again, your music has to be extremely loud to hear these, so I kind of just lop those off because it's not sub bass, that's like rumble. So we're looking at this chart, and again, let's start with F350. It's the center of the whole thing. Again, we have the 4th octave down the center, and we have 3 octaves on either side. Again, we have to simplify the information and remove what we don't need to make it human wieldable. Going for perfection and having all the information there hasn't worked for us yet, so let's simplify for now, and I'll show you how to get those octaves back should you want them. But we start in the 4th octave with F4. You can see that there's offsets for F sharp, which is 350 plus 20, and there's another offset which is minus 20 for E. And let's go now to the D group. D, the base number is 300. D natural is 300 minus 6. D sharp is 300 plus 12. And I'm going to explain how these are related in a second. Let's go now to the G group. G4 natural is 400 minus 8. G sharp 4 is 400 plus 16. I'm not looking at the chart right now, I'm just doing this from memory. B4 is 500 minus 6. C4 is 280 minus 18, and C sharp 4 is 280 minus 3. So let's talk about how these numbers are related. The 350 group, they're just related from the middle, okay, F4. And I just kept those for E because it just works best. It's a single offset, which is 20, and you subtract for E and you add for F sharp, and you just keep F the way it is. Now, the 300 group, which is the D group, you can see that the offset for D natural is minus 6. Well, what's 3 times 2? 6. And since D natural is the lower one, you're going to subtract 6 cents from 300 to get whatever frequency that is. I'm sorry, I'm not really actually good at math, but if you think it's equivalent number, you know, 300 minus 6 is the frequency. It's just a different way of thinking of it. 300 plus 12, well, 3 times 4 is 12. So obviously D sharp is higher in pitch, so you add that. Okay, you see, you understand that multiplication relationship? 3 times 2 is 6, and you subtract. and then 3 times 4 is 12, and you add that, okay? Well, the G group works the exact same way, except from a base number of 400. So you multiply 4 times 2, and that's 8. So you subtract that to get G natural, 4. 4 times 4 is 16, and you add that to get G sharp 4. 500, again, the offset is 6 from a base of 500. So whatever that number is, that's the frequency within a very close margin, and we'll get into the accuracy chart later. And then 200, C is 280. So C natural is 280 minus 18, and C sharp is 280 minus 3. This one's a little bit not related, but 280 minus 18 kind of rhymes, and then the minus 3 is kind of related to the minus 18 in that it would be like 15, right? So that's the offset, and I forgot about A. A440 obviously is the A group, and you add plus 26 to get A sharp. That's it. If you want to go up in the octaves, all you do is multiply both numbers by 2 and maintain whether it's addition or subtraction. So let's start with F4, which is 350. There's no offset. To go up to F5, you just multiply 350 by 2, which is 700. If you want to go up to F6, it's 700 times 2, which is 1400, okay? And then you go up to F7, and that's 2800, right? So let's go back to F4, and then you want to go down to F3, and that's 175. Now, here's where what I call the 88 rule, or the 88 exception. Again, I'm not good at math, so I can think of two numbers and add them and divide them by 2, but then trying to combine them again kind of throws me out. But if you're good at math, then you don't need to use this. But what I do is I say half of 175 is 88. The effective accuracy is changed by 0.52% by making this slight alteration. Again, if you're very good at math, you can use 87.5 and then 43.25 below that. But to me, that's, especially when you combine it with the offsets, it's just too cumbersome. So I say half of 175 is 88, and half of that is 44. Okay, now we're all the way down to F1. Simple AF, right? Let's use A sharp as an example. Why not? Because this one's maybe a little bit more tricky. So we know that A sharp 4 is 440 plus 26. Well, what's 440 times 2? 880, and then 26 times 2 is 52, and you add those together, and that's your frequency. So then you want to go 880 up to, you'll be at A sharp 6, then it's 1760 plus 104, etc. Okay? And then if you want to go down, you would just subtract. So A sharp 4 is 440 plus 26, so you go 220 plus 13, and you want to go down to the second octave, A sharp 2, that's 110 plus 6.5. That's exactly how it works. So you can take this all the way down to the 0 octave if you want. The whole accuracy of this system is 99.2%, 99.20 actually. And it would be 99.72 if you were to use 87.5 and then 43.25 for the E, F, and F sharp group in the second and first octaves. But that's up to you. I like to use it how it is. Everything applies like this. You can look at these things right now. If you look at let's look at C natural. C natural is 280 minus 18, okay? So 140 minus 9 is going to be C natural 3. And then C2 is 70 minus 4.5, and so on. Again, it's all right there. With that being said, let's take a look at the actual differences between the numbers you get with the F350 system and the pocket calculator values that you would get if you were to be like an uber nerd about it and you just wanted everything to be 100%. You can see from this chart that obviously not everything's 100% accurate, and if you look at G sharp 7 or something is like 6 cents out, it's actually not that bad because Wikipedia says that we can only hear to about 5 or 6 cent accuracy. I suspect that that depends on the person, the listening environment, and the octave which is being tested. But if we take that at face value, then most of these differences don't even matter. So let's look at the percentage chart. And here you'll be able to see that even though that frequency was almost 7 cents out, it's still 99% plus accurate, okay? It's really, really close, probably closer than you can hear, especially when you get up to those really high frequencies. The notes are just so far apart. You know, when you go down to the 0 octave, even 1 Hertz changes the note value. But up there, it's a lot. I don't know exactly how much, but it's a lot. You just don't need to be quite as precise. But the percentage value of precision remains the same throughout all the octaves using this system. Again, because I use the 88 rule for the E, F, and F sharp group in the second and first octaves, we lose about 0.5% accuracy. But again, if you're a math wizard, then you can go ahead and use like whatever precision values you want, okay? That would be 87.5 and then 43.25. Lastly, I want to give you guys a bonus trick rule for finding the 0 octave, because again, since you can't hear it and most of your speakers can't reproduce it, I just come up with a quick rule for finding the 0 octave. I call it the sweet 16 rule, because C0 is 16.5. In fact, all the values are whole numbers and halves up to 21. So it's 16.5, 17.5, 18.5, 19.5, 20.5, 21.5. And then F sharp 0 is 23. And then everything goes up by 1.5 from there. So 23 goes to 4.5, which goes to 26, which goes to 27.5, which goes to 29, and then 30.5, okay? It's pretty close. It's slightly less accurate than the full 350 method, but it's faster. And if you want it to be just a little bit more accurate, you would add to the sweet 16 rule. You say sweet 16 in F and B, just add 0.33. The first three subtract 0.15. It sounds kind of long, but it rhymes, so I'm gonna say it again. Sweet 16 in F and B, just add 0.33. The first three subtract 0.15. Okay, what that means is you're going to use the sweet 16 rule, which I say 16 to 21 is half as fun. 23 is like the number 23 with Jim Carrey, which was like that crazy movie about him going nuts, and I feel like that's very pertinent to this topic here. Everything above that is 1.5, which I just think of like older years fly by faster, okay? So that's the sweet 16 rule, and then you add F and B, add 0.33. So you just go to F, you add 0.33 Hertz, you go to B, add 0.33 Hertz, and then for C, C sharp, and D natural, you subtract 0.15, and then you kind of improve the overall accuracy. But again, the 0 octave is not sub-bass, so for you EDM guys out there, this does not apply to you. It only applies to like church organists and maybe the people, the professionals who are working in gigantic audio systems for like Metallica or outdoor venues. I hope this was helpful. I don't think I can explain it any better, but again, this system, as I use it, has a minimum of 99.20% accuracy. And if you're halfway decent at math, it's 99.72% accurate. It's based on whole numbers, which are easily multipliable and divisible, or easy to multiply and divide, because I don't think those are actually words. And then they just use simple offsets, which are also easy to multiply and divide. Feel free to take a screenshot of this. Please share it with at least 2 people if you found this to be interesting. I really believe that this can revolutionize the memorability of the audio frequency chart and give a ton more confidence to people in the studio when using EQ or DJs who do harmonic mixing. So make sure that everybody who you think even might be 1% interested in this has access to it, okay? So feel free to watch another one of my tutorials. Subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.